Hello, my name is Tobin Massey of Group 6, and today I'll be narrating the Teaming at Disney Animation case number 2. This was prepared by Donovan Roberts, Jason Runyon, myself, and Wilfredo Reyna Garcia. So, with a little bit of background information, Walt Disney Animation, as you can see, was founded in 1923. And they had a really early focus on short films, but these short films were important because they really led Disney to what it's become today with their many animations and very famous films. Their first full length film was actually Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, all the way back in 1937. This was a big milestone for them because making full length films back then was very difficult and it was a very lengthy process. It's nothing like it is today. Today, it still remains a very lengthy process. In 2006, Disney acquired Pixar, and the transition was to start making groups more autonomous. And this will move us into our central identification issue. So, with this new acquisition of Pixar and a new demand for these great animated films they've been creating, instilling autonomy was something they had a huge focus on. They wanted these groups to be able to work by themselves without always having to ask for approval, because asking for approval on these kinds of projects was constantly slowing things down. Without the approval to do what they needed, these groups they didn't actually know whether or not they should start animating or not. As I've said, animating is a very lengthy process, and working on animation that won't actually be used is very discouraged, basically, because of all the time it would take. So it took a lot of time getting approval for all these new ideas they had. So by instilling autonomy in these groups, they wanted them to be able to work without always having to ask for approval. So they had these ideas of which systems would work best, like how to do it, and what they really needed to do. So their whole idea with autonomy was to improve the efficiency of the groups. And these were the solutions our groups came up with. So our first solution was to run a trial. And this trial would have had the technical team have full autonomy to act. However, on a project, a large project like they would have at Disney, the project grouped together would have many small subdivided groups inside. So we weren't saying to make the entire project autonomous. We were saying you give one of these subdivided groups autonomy to work how they want to. So this one small group, one of the let's say 5 groups, would have autonomy, and if that group failed, you still had a 4 out of 5 group project success rate that you could then continue to make up for the rest. Figured this would be a good idea because if it works, then you could move it slowly into the other subdivided groups, and eventually the whole project would be running autonomous. But if it didn't, then they would be able to continue with the work they had been doing. Because at Disney, they don't have the big animation level projects that would actually work for a trial run. They just don't have the time to be setting these kinds of things up with no real intention of ever using them again. The second solution we proposed was adding some kind of incentive for these people that worked on these successful projects. Because changing the entire style of how people do things in a work environment can be very stressful and it puts a lot of pressure on the employees to work in this new system. So these incentives for successful groups, which would be created by project managers or project executives, would be enough, hopefully, to motivate these employees to work hard. And whichever group or whichever project happened to win would, even if other projects or other groups didn't win, then they still would have worked very hard together to reach their goal, which would mean they had been working hard in this new system, which essentially means they would have learned how to work. And this solution also fixes another problem that the autonomous projects had originally. Because of the nature of a group with no leader, the group quite often had a problem resolving issues between two people. If one person had an idea and another person had an idea, they came together and they just could not agree with the other person's idea. There was no leadership because of the autonomy to actually tell them which idea to go with. And so the projects often had a lot of tension to them and a lot of getting nowhere because everyone was arguing. We believe this incentive idea would help with that because it would foster a sort of it would foster an attitude of cooperation between the groups because everyone wants to win. So our third and final solution was to phase in the system slowly, like one group at a time. The way we decided this would work is, let's say we have 6 groups. We give the first group the autonomy to work as they want to, and they have a lot of problems at first. They don't really know what they're getting themselves into, and we see how that goes. And then a month later, we add a second group into this autonomy. The thing about the second group is now they would have all the knowledge from the first group. They would know what doesn't work and they would know what works very well. So for this system, they would continue down, let's say a month at a time, adding a new group every month. So by the end of the 6 months, the sixth group, just starting out on this new system, would have months of experience to call back on. The first group now has been working like this for 6 months. They have a good understanding of everything. And not only do they have a good understanding, but from all the other groups' knowledge, they have a better and better idea of how it would work. So this new group now has all the experience and knowledge of the older groups to call upon. So with these solutions, we talked among ourselves to reach the best way to resolve the issue. And we decided the best way to resolve the issue would have Disney phase in these groups over time. If they were to focus on only having one group phase into the autonomy, they could keep a watchful eye on them, and then they could continue moving these groups one at a time. We decided this was the best system because the other systems were actually just too risky. A trial run project could be risky because even if one group on one project failed, projects go under all the time because they don't finish in time. Or what if the main first group didn't finish in time in the first place? Then delaying it even further could be devastating for the project. The incentive was also too risky. It could lead to rushed work in excuse me, in order to reach results. And this rushed or bad work could get employees into bad habits and they would just continue working like this. It also may foster a bad attitude between groups that didn't win the prize or the incentive. And because of this, we decided the trial run was too risky and could be potentially too costly to continue. And the incentive was too risky because it would foster a bad attitude. So we decided the phasing in the group system one at a time was the best. From the previous groups would be invaluable in continuing, and the knowledge from everything that they learned would just make this system the best to phase in. For our conclusion here, the key takeaways of our system were how to instill autonomy. The whole goal Disney had here was to instill autonomy in their animation studios to increase efficiency. As they wanted to increase the efficiency, and they decided the best way would be to cut out the middleman and install autonomy. We determined, or we went over the solutions for the best resolutions, the trial run solution, which we decided could potentially be too costly. There was the phasing in solution that we had decided was the best solution. And then the last solution, or sorry, then the second solution that we decided uh, was the incentive solution, which we eventually also decided not to go with. Thank you very much for your time.